All right, let's talk about one of the most crucial skills in chess. It's that final step, going from a position where you should win to actually, winning the game. It's all about nailing those basic checkmates. So let's dive in. Oh man, who hasn't been here? I think we've all felt this exact pain. You completely outplay your opponent, you're up a ton of material, the win is right there, but you just can't seal the deal. The king keeps wiggling out, and next thing you know, it's a stalemate or you hit the 50-move roll. It is, without a doubt, one of the most gut-wrenching feelings for any chess player. So what's the fix? How do we stop that from ever happening again? Well, the answer is learning simple, repeatable, absolutely foolproof patterns. This isn't about some flashy, complicated tactic. It's about knowing a clear procedure to corner the king and deliver that final blow. Today, we're going to walk through the three most essential patterns: the two-rook mate, the queen and king, and the classic king and rook. We're going to start with the easiest one of them all, the two-rook checkmate. And what's so amazing about this pattern is just how powerful it is. You literally don't even need your king. Your two rooks can do the entire job all by themselves. The whole idea here is just beautiful in its simplicity. You can think of it in a couple of ways. Some people call it the ladder mate, where your rooks are climbing up the board one rung at a time. I also like to think of it as a lawnmower, just cutting away space from the enemy king. One rook creates this wall of fire that the king can't cross, and then the other rook swoops in to push him back. So the process is this really simple, repeating rhythm. First, one rook cuts him off, then the second rook checks, forcing the king back. You just keep doing that over and over, rank by rank. Now, you might be wondering, what if the king attacks one of my rooks? No problem at all. You just slide that attacked rook all the way to the other side of the board. It's way faster than the king. And you just continue the pattern. Easy. Okay, next up, the queen and king. Now, the queen is an absolute monster in the endgame. It's so powerful. But with that power comes a huge risk. This method is incredibly fast, but there's one major trap that you have to be super careful to avoid. So, the key technique here is to use your queen to build a box around the enemy king, and then just make that box smaller and smaller. And the safest, most efficient way to do that is to always keep your queen a knight's move away from the other king. This is such a clever little trick because it uses the queen's full power, restricting squares vertically, horizontally, and diagonally, all while keeping her perfectly safe from being captured. So here's the game plan. You get your queen into that knight's move position, and then as the enemy king moves, you just kind of copy him, always keeping that distance and slowly tightening the box. Once you've pushed him all the way to the edge of the board, you stop chasing with the queen. Now it's time to bring in your own king to help deliver the final blow. But this is where things can go wrong. You have got to know the difference between a checkmate and stalemate. Seriously. In both cases, the enemy king has zero legal moves. But here's the critical game-deciding difference. For a checkmate, the king must be in check. If he's not in check but can't move anywhere, that's a stalemate. And the game is a draw. You just threw away a perfectly good win. It is so easy to accidentally do this with a queen, so always be aware of the king's last few squares. And finally, we've arrived at the most challenging of the basic checkmates. But honestly, it's also the most instructive, the king and rook. See, a queen can pretty much do the job alone. Two rooks don't need any help, but a single rook needs a partner. This isn't a solo act, it's a coordinated dance. The whole idea here is teamwork. The rook is fantastic at cutting off huge parts of the board, but by itself, it can't actually force the king backward. That's where your king has to step up. Your king's job is to control those key squares right in front of the enemy king, creating a wall that he can't get past. This frees up your rook to do its job, which is pushing the king closer and closer to the edge. And look at this partnership in action. The white king is standing right opposite the black king, basically staring him down and controlling all the escape squares. That creates the perfect barrier, and now the rook has a free hand to slice across the entire rank, forcing the black king back. They're literally closing the box together. So, how does this dance actually play out? Well, first, your rook cuts off a big chunk of the board. Then you march your king up until it's directly facing the enemy king. We call that opposition. Once you have that opposition, a simple check with the rook forces him back. But what if he keeps dodging you? What if he won't step in front of your king? Well, that's where this brilliant little concept called a waiting move comes in. A waiting move is exactly what it sounds like. It's a quiet little move, usually just shifting your rook one square to the side, that doesn't really change anything. except it passes the turn. And because your opponent is legally required to move, they're forced to step into a bad square, often right into opposition with your king. And that's when you pounce. The whole King and Rook endgame is only possible because your opponent isn't allowed to just say, pass. So after you repeat this little dance, get opposition, check, use a waiting move, get opposition again, you will eventually force their king all the way to the back rank. And once he has nowhere left to run, your rook slides over and delivers that final beautiful checkmate. It's the perfect finish to all that teamwork. Okay, so you now have the theory behind the 3 most important checkmating patterns in all of chess. But knowing the idea is one thing. Being able to execute it flawlessly when the clock is ticking, well, that's something else entirely. So how do we make this stuff second nature?
Practice. It's really that simple. Go onto a site like chess.com or Lichess and use their endgame drills. They're perfect for this. My advice? Start with the 2 rook mate until you can do it in your sleep. Then move on to the queen mate, and always be on the lookout for stalemate. And once you've got that down, it's time to learn the king and rook dance. When you can do them all perfectly, give yourself a challenge. Try to do it with only 30 seconds on the clock. That's how you build real muscle memory.
So there you have it, the essential blueprints for turning that winning position into a 1 game. No more heartbreaking draws when you're completely dominating. You've got the tools now. The only question is, which one are you going to fire up and master first?